So we went in the next week on a Wednesday night to Silverdale to a meeting, so nervous, had like a boardroom, and there was like 6 of them there. We came in, and they said, just tell us your story. Tell us what God is doing. Well, God, share our story, what we need. They said, how much do you need? About $4,000 or $5,000. I said, okay. And we finished, they prayed with us. It was very special. We went on to the service, and from there I went to choir. At the end of choir, the lady that was the head of the group came and sat, Sean talking. I'm like, okay. She said, you've been approved. I said, wow. I said, we got 6 weeks. We're approved. She said, $1,000. I said, well, that's a fourth almost of what we need. Well, anyway, I get home. The phone rings again, and she said, this is Carla. She said, I just want to let you know, someone in our church anonymously has given the rest of your adoption money to you. $3,000. I'm just telling you, God was all over that. So we ended up, we knew at that point that this was obviously meant to be. So we're driving up to Ohio in the car with our 3 kids, car seats everywhere. And we drive up the road, and we get a call from Debbie, the birth mother, for Brody. We're like, hey, she said, the doctor said I could have it today, which is Friday, tomorrow, which is Saturday or Sunday. And we're like, well, whatever needs to happen, happens. And so we ended up, it worked out for Sunday. Well, what happened was Bennett turned 1 on Saturday, and Brody was 1 the next day. So we had a newborn, a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 4-year-old, and a circus act. I mean, we were just a complete circus act. But God wasn't finished working in our lives at that point. God provided for an adoption that we had no idea. We were going to try to borrow the money, and God said, I have something better for you. How many times have we done that? Have we tried to do things on our own when it's not meant to be, not the way we're supposed to do it? And God says, wait. Well, I was waiting, and I kept waiting because my house was on the market. So here I got my babies, we're all good, we're all together, but now I've got to sell a house. My house up in Ohio was listed in November, and I told my apartment complex here in Chattanooga, I said, how do I get out of the lease? Because I was going to sell. It's a good neighborhood, it's a good price, it's going to work. She said, well, you can do this. Well, after 6 months, it still hadn't sold. And we had no place to go. I have bullet points here for all these things we're talking about. My next thing says homeless. Homeless. I'm paying for rent. I'm paying a mortgage up in Ohio. And I'm living here, and LifeWay paid 6 months. And when 6 months was done, they weren't going to pay anymore. And I was maxed out. We had borrowed money for this, borrowed money for that, borrowed money for this, borrowed money for that. And so with 1 income, 6 of us, it was really hard. So we ended up, I talked with the director of missions in Chattanooga, and I just casually said, if you know of anybody that has a parsonage or a mission home or something like that that would work out, we really could use that. Well, we'll see. We'll see what we can come up with. Well, lo and behold, we were able to go stay in a parsonage in Kingston First Baptist Church. They had a vacancy, and so we ended up going there. So I moved in with my family into a 4-bedroom home. I didn't pay rent. I didn't pay gas. I didn't pay electric. I didn't pay anything here in Chattanooga, but I was paying all this stuff up in Ohio. And all of a sudden, my focus switched. And I know this, for me, this is where I feel God was really, really working in my life. All of a sudden, all I could see over here was, God, if you're God, why don't you sell my home? God, if you're God, why don't you sell my home? I wasn't seeing that God had provided all these wonderful ways for me, and God had done all these things. Doubt crept in my mind. I started to doubt if God even existed. Even through all the things that we experienced. I said, God, all I can see is my house isn't selling. So July came, and August came, and September came, and October came, and November came. It wouldn't sell. I just kept, God, are you out there? Can't you hear my prayer? And I really was even doubting that He existed, which is really stupid, but it's what I experienced because all I could focus on was the sale of my home. Couldn't sell my home, couldn't sell my home, couldn't sell my home. And I know all of us have in our own life that one thing maybe that comes up that, well, God, if you're God, how come this isn't happening? How come you can't do this? Because you're God. But anyway, a very godly Sunday school class at Silverdale, the Sunday school teacher stood up one Sunday and said, you know what? He said, I am compelled today, and I don't know why, but I'm just compelled to pray for the Smiths, to fast tomorrow, to pray for the sale of their home. This was the Sunday after Thanksgiving. In the real estate world, it's really hard to sell your home in the holidays, okay? Especially in an area where there was all automobile industry and that had started to just die. And that's why my home wasn't selling, because all the crisis that was going on with GM and Ford and all those things, that was the people that lived where I lived. That's where there were plants and all that kind of stuff. That was their income. And so the real estate just came to a crashing halt. anyway, he said, let's pray and fast. We're going to pray and fast for the Smiths. Well, it ended up that next day that I got a phone call. And guess what? I had a contract. I had a contract on my home. And I knew God could do all this, but God sold my home. And so we ended up moving into, from the parsonage to the house we're in right now. And just God can work so many different things. And so it's just amazing to see how God took care of us. Looking back, it's really, I know that God gives us 20/20 vision sometimes, or with glasses, we can see. But we're in the middle of a crisis, a belief, or a crisis situation. We can't always see God's hand until we get past it. You know what I'm saying? Once we get past it, we can look back and see God's hand through it all. So once we actually got in our home, it took me a few months. I'm like, God was there the whole time. Not only was he there, but I didn't pay rent for all those months. I didn't pay gas. I didn't cut my grass. God provided for me in all that ways. So anyway, God is just an amazing God. God is just an amazing God. And so I want to give a little bit of details about a couple things. Eliza, my daughter, is in 4th grade. And this is a quote from her teacher last year. She says, when I grow up, I want to be Eliza. That was what her teacher said. Eliza is this bolt of sunshine. Is she not just happy all the time and all that? Eliza has had struggling with her, with a lot of issues. And so we took her in for her kindergarten testing at Westview, and they said, well, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, let's come have a meeting. And they said, your daughter, which should know the alphabet, knows the letter A. That's all she knew. That's all she could have. And she had epilepsy. She was on medication. She had seizures when she was a baby. And she also had minor heart surgery. She's allergic to peanuts. I mean, she is the one that has all the stuff going on. So anyway, we took her in, and by the end of that 1st grade year, they came up with a plan. They put her in a special needs education class as well as putting her in part of kindergarten. She wrote her name out, and that was the beginning. And so she writes her name, and she reads, and she does math, and she was doing subtraction and all this week. But we had a test in November for her IQ. And what used to be called mental retardation, which is under the number 70 IQ, is now called intellectually disabled or something like that, ID. Her IQ score was 66. So God's going to be doing some more neat things with our daughter Eliza, because God's going to provide and make some, just do some neat things. But with Eliza, she's just so happy. In fact, when we got her scores, they're like, she scored so low on this reasoning, but her social skills, they're in the 80s, And so, well, she's going to be happy. She's going to have friends wherever she goes. So, I just know there's going to be something special God's going to look out for her. But she's the only child that's not here today. But I just want to, again, just going to give God the glory for our stories. But, what's been neat has been an opportunity for us to kind of get on the other side of the adoption world. After having these 4 that God had planned out before eternity, planned to have these 4 children, he also knew that there'd be other people that wanted to adopt as well. And so I was asked to be on that same adoption board at Silverdale that I was a part that blessed us when we had that adoption. And I want to say a little bit about how that works at our church. We have a board of about 6 people, and we have people that donate during the service, like during the weekly tithes to a designated funds for the adoption board. And right now we have almost $20,000 in our funds for the adoption ministry. People that have been through it want to support it. People that know of families want to support it. And we've been able to see so many families be joined together with their child. And so it's just amazing ministry. And we meet to pray with people, and we have an adoption fellowship group at our church. It's kind of at idle point right now, but we used to get together once a month, and we're going to do this at some point again, with all the families that have ever adopted, and they just run around. It's just this international little world. There's Russians, biracials, Hispanics, Chinese. It's just a beautiful picture of God's family, and we get together with that. And we also are able to meet with anyone that's got a homestead that has questions to help them with that. And so it's just a neat part for me to be able to be a part of that. I've gone to other churches and helped them with starting their ministries. We work with Bethany a lot, on the fairs, and we are waiting right now for a family to help them in their pursuit of a daughter from China, which should be any time. So it's just amazing to see how God can take a couple that trust Him, even though it's not difficult, and to walk through this process and to look back and see what He's done for everything. He gets all the glory for that. So anyway, that's kind of our story. So thank you for letting us come today and to be able to share.
junk or shared and